Hello, hello, hello. Hello again, everybody. This is Coach Powell. Welcome to Coach Powell Team Development. This is Coffee Tea, you and me, every Friday. I get together with entrepreneurs, business leaders, program directors, professionals of all types to help them begin that process of becoming and creating more and everlasting success. We try to make sure we're doing everything we can to give you all the best information, the most current and most relevant approaches to developing your professional relationships and moving your business forward, no matter what that business is. I've been at this now for about 20 years, and I have to say I've enjoyed every moment of creating opportunities like this for thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world. This particular show has been broadcasting now probably since the beginning of COVID, and we're on, I can't even tell you what 100th of episodes there is, but because we never miss a Friday. Every once in a while, if we have to take a vacation, we might do a replay or we might broadcast early, but we're always here every Friday for entrepreneurs and business leaders just like you. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you'll know that we're in a series. And the series that we're working on right now is based on a training program we created years ago called the 9 Steps to Professional Relationship Mastery. And the whole goal of the 9-step program is literally to help elevate people's level of trust that they have with one another so they can have the best business relationships, they can have the best mentorships, the best advisory councils, the best of everything. But I find that taking the steps is critically important. If you look at the illustration that we provide, you can see that on our illustration list, you're going to see several different of the 9 steps. We started the first week we began this series talking about listening up. Why is it important to really, really learn how to listen powerfully, how to ask engaging questions, how to follow up on those questions in ways that create opportunities for expanded relationship. This is a critical skill that if you don't have, I suggest you go back and watch episodes number 1. We'll begin an overview of all the 9 steps, but also episode number 2, we take a deep dive into listen up. In the next episode, we talked about making promises and keeping promises, along with understanding what the promise of your particular industry, your particular talents, your particular gifts may bring you. You have to understand the trajectory of your talent and your gifts. If you don't understand that trajectory, then it's hard for you to begin to predict or even make any kinds of commitments that are going to be able to stick. It's important to set the right types of expectations when you're going to go into any particular professional relationship, whether it's just a transaction or you're trying to do something more meaningful, like bring someone into your inner circle. It is important that you learn how to and accept the ability to make and keep promises, even promises that might stretch you in terms of your gifts and your talents, but not break you. So we don't want you to make promises that it's impossible for you to keep. We want you to make promises that are interesting, that are meaningful, that are relevant, and that are useful for everybody involved. So it's super, super important making promises and keep promises from your promise is a great thing. So promises is the next step. Step number 3 in relationship development process is really all about following up and following through. As you said earlier, if you make promises and you make commitments, you set expectations, it is important now to be able to follow up and follow through with those ideas and those concepts. When you can do this and do this exceptionally well, what happens is people begin to trust you even that much more. So that's the first 3 steps of the know me, like me, trust me process that makes up the 9-step program. The next 2 steps we're going to get into, the steps we got into the next one is after you've listened, after you've made promises and followed up on those promises, now you have the opportunity to get really connected, to really start to go deep on the relationship and figure out where it is that you may have similar likes and similar interests and similar ideas. Maybe you come up with something that you want to do together. You begin that collaborative process. You've decided you've gotten to know each other. You've decided what you both can offer, what you both bring to the table, and now you're starting to the beginning processes of collaboration. The next step is having the meeting of the minds, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about everything you need to talk about to have successful meetings. And I'm not talking about just the techniques of having meetings, and that's important stuff. You got to get that right. But really, we're talking about the mindset that you have to have. And I've developed a wonderful term called connectmanship, right? And we're gonna get into that so that you understand what that's all about, because it's a combination of being connected, but it also is including fellowship, right? So that trademark term we're going to get into, and we're going to talk a little bit about in just a little while. I want to take a big break, and when we take that break, we're going to come back and we're going to get this party started. I hope you guys enjoy this. All right. Welcome to Coffee Tea, You and Me. This is Coach Powell. This is Coach Powell Training Development. We try to make sure we're doing everything we can to develop all the skills, the tools, everything needed for entrepreneurs and business leaders to become successful and great at what they do. Today's topic is super important, right? Today's topic we're getting into is really all about maintaining and understanding how to elevate relationships, take it to the next level in your professional meetings. Now, when you're having professional meetings with people, it is important, obviously, to make sure that you're doing a couple things. There's 4 key rules that you want to make sure that you do, right? You always want to make sure that you're respecting people's time, authenticity, and focus, right? So that means set an agenda. That means make sure that you're not setting meetings that are going to wander all over the place and not allow people to literally show up with their best, right? So you want to create that environment where people can show up with their best. Things will start on time. We have an agenda. We know what we're talking about. We have a focus, and we can get the work done. That's super important. The next rule you want to talk about when it comes to setting meetings and creating great dynamic meetings is really understanding the value of mutual accountability in terms of your partnerships. What are you offering? What are you bringing to the table? What does everybody bring to the table? And how can we begin to value what everybody brings to the table so that we can start to account for the gifts and the talents that we all share, right? Super important. The next rule of an environment kind of thing you want to create is you're going to want to go, you're going to really share all the resources that you can. Whatever resources that you have in abundance, those are much easier to share than resources that you have, and you have to sort of make really, really deep sacrifices to share. Now, I'm not saying that sacrifice isn't important or something that you shouldn't do, but I am saying it's much easier to share resources that you have in abundance. So think about the talents and skills that you have and this level of expertise that you have that's over and above maybe your peers might have. Those things might be easier for you to share with others. Think about the resources in terms of financial resources or connections that you may have. And depending on the quality of those connections, then you might be able to share those connections really, really well. But you have to, again, do that assessment to figure out, what resources I really do have. What kind of talent do I have? What kind of time do I have? What kind of treasure am I really able to offer to others? Because those set up the scenarios and abilities for you to collaborate. And then you have to communicate what those resources are. The last step in really thinking about how you're going to set up a wonderful winning meetings all the time is you need to embrace deep intuition. Now, what do I mean by that? There's a feeling that you have, and when you're working with other people, you can't get away from the fact that we do have feelings. We do share very personal connections. We do have emotional ties to one another, and those ties are manifested either in a positive or a negative way. And if you bring a level of positive energy and positive attitude to any meeting that you're going to have, then that attitude is going to become infectious. But also, if you bring a level of negativity and hesitation and doubt to a meeting, that's also going to become infectious. And so you have to do the work on yourself, whatever it is that you need to do to go deep with yourself and really begin to understanding how to bring the goodness out, how to bring out all of the positive energy, the positive attitudes, and the things that you have to bear. Because really, who deserves your best other than the people that you're trying to work with, whether they're going to be a casual acquaintance or a one-time transaction, or maybe something deeper, something more meaningful. You have to be willing to know what you can bring to the table, what you can offer, and you have to be willing to offer that, not just the traditional resources, but I'm talking about the emotional resources. I'm talking about the energy. You have to be willing to really, really bring a great amount of energy, a great amount of positive energy to any meetings that you're going to have with other people, because you never know who is going to need that help, who's going to need that resource, who's going to need that boost of what needs to happen in order to make just great things happen for themselves and everybody else, right? And so now those are all the techniques and the strategies you want to bring to the table. But I said earlier, there's a new term that I want to share with you called connectorship. And connectorship is a hybrid term that we created. We created this based on an understanding of what fellowship brings to the table and what connections bring to the table, high connections bring to the table, and how you can overlap those two concepts and those ideas in a meaningful way. All right, and there's a couple of processes and thought process, I would say ideas that I want you to embrace. The first idea is you must be willing to share your mutual purposes, right? There's a why you're gathering. There's a why you're getting together. There's a why that you're entering into this relationship with each other. And it may be something that you may be rekindling something that you started years ago. You may be getting into a brand new professional relationship of some type. And I don't care what you would label that professional relationship, right? But it's important that you share your mutual purpose. Why? What's in it for you? What's in it for everybody else? Make sure everybody understands what their why is, because the purposes the cross purposes that you have, and especially if those purposes are shared, are going to be things that you can use later on to drive further opportunities in relationship, right? So understand why, understand the purpose. Why are you getting together? You got to do that. right? The agenda is in itself is not the only thing that drives the why. And so you have to take the deep dive and make sure you understand what each other's why is. It's critically important. The second thing I want to share with you is I want you to be able to encourage multiple connections. And what do I mean by that? A lot of times when people get together, they have one thing in common, and they think that one thing is going to drive all of the relationship. They think that one thing is going to make the total difference in everything that they do in their relationship. And there is a type of emotional and psychological bias called self-essentialist reasoning. I'm going to repeat that again. Self-essentialist reasoning. A person who's falling into the self-essentialist reasoning trap really is falling into that one connection thought process. And that means you might like football or racquetball or some sport, and you might think, together that you will both enjoy it, and you assume, based on that one common interest, that there's a whole lot of other shared worldviews that you might have based on that one common interest. And that simply isn't true. The assumption that you make that you have a shared worldview because you have one common interest is not going to be good enough to really establish a really, really deep relationship. So you have to find multiple things that you might connect over. Maybe you're both amateur artists. Maybe one is an amateur artist, one is a full-time artist. Maybe somebody loves certain puzzles or engineering strategies, or maybe somebody is an introvert and somebody is an extrovert, or whatever those things are. Share it as much as you can so you can find multiple common interests, multiple levels of connection. The more levels of connection that you have with someone based on family, occupation, recreation, maybe even money, you may have shared vision. You may have opportunities that you've dealt with in the past that are similar. You may have current existing networks that you work with. You may have other commitments that you've shared. All kinds of things can be shared, but you need to run through them all so you can find as many connections as you possibly can. It's important to encourage multiple layers of connection when you're working with other people, because you want to be able to develop a sense of camaraderie, which we'll talk about later on. The next thing you want to think about is how you get together. What's the fun of it? Are you breaking bread? Are you having a meal? Are you doing something that's comforting and rejuvenating as you're meeting? Because I promise you, no matter how much work that you get done, the more that you're going to be able to relax into that work, the more you're going to be able to enjoy that work, the more you're going to come back and do it over and over and over and over and over again. Studies show that when you share a meal together, while you're doing it in the workplace and it's a relaxing, comforting atmosphere, you develop stronger relationships, you increase your engagement, you have more of an inclusive nature in terms of what you're doing in your team. I mean, you focus on total wellness becomes, especially if you're eating healthy, that's really helpful, right? Productivity goes up and the stress goes down. All these things are very, very possible, and you're going to, end up basically finding more levels of satisfaction and fulfillment in your professional relationships when you do that over a meal, when you do that over calming, useful atmosphere, right? The last thing I want to mention when it comes to setting up your professional meetings and working with one another is don't be afraid to go big. And I mean bigger than both of you, right? Don't be afraid to share your highest values, the things that you matter most. If it doesn't get down to a soulful or spiritual level, you're not really working hard enough to get there, right? So it's super important that you find those opportunities to share your highest values, the things that make you the deepest connections you may have. You may share a similar respect, a regard for your ancestors. You may have a similar respect for, something of spiritual matters or some higher truths or principles that you both believe in. It's important that you find those moments and find those things because they drive the deepest parts of your relationship. Okay, now let's get back to this connectorship model. When we developed the connectorship model, we found that there were, 6 key concepts and ideas that really drive this ability to deeply fellowship with others. And they mean so much because when you do these well, People they find fulfillment in their partnerships. They find fulfillment in their mentorships, in their advisory councils or their community councils, or their board members or board seats, board leadership. All these things are super, super important, but you gotta understand the terms. You're not going to be able to go into deep connectorship with people unless you understand these 6 ideas: communion, camaraderie, cooperation, solidarity, sociability, and affiliation. Let's dig into it. We got a couple minutes today. Communion. What is communion? When we think about communion, what are we thinking about? What are we talking about? What are we actually sharing when we're thinking about communion? We're sharing an exchange of intimate thoughts and feelings on a mental and spiritual level. I can't stress that enough. Who are you working with on a regular basis where you're sharing and exchanging the deepest, most intimate thoughts that you have? Now, I'm not talking about sexual relationship or some type of romantic relationship. I am talking though about being in relationship with another person, no matter what that is. If the relationship is just business and it's not personal, then that's not going to help you get to higher levels of trust. At some point, your relationship is going to be more personal than your traditional business relationship. You have to be willing to be in communion with that person. Second concept, camaraderie. If you're not friends and you haven't developed a level of mutual trust where you are willing to and enjoy spending time together, we're going to have a problem getting to those higher levels of trust again. And when you can't get to higher levels of trust because you don't really know the person, you don't really know what they're up to, you don't really know what makes them tick, and you haven't spent enough time becoming familiar with them, then again, it becomes very difficult to trust and know what you can trust each other for. The third concept that I want to share with you in the 6 levels of connectorship is cooperation. Your ability to develop a mutual level of assistance in working towards a common goal, right? I can't stress enough how important that is in terms of developing and growing a professional relationship, right? If you're going to be working on something together, and you should be able to seek in people that you want to have a professional relationship with, you should be seeking what you can work on together, not something that someone else has to teach you and you have to learn. That's a different model, right? But what can you work on together? Even mentors and proteges have a win-win relationship when you think about it. Because, I studied this in the past, and what mentors love most about working with their protege is they get to pour into someone who could take what they're doing and run with it in a way that they don't make the same mistakes that they may have made in the past, right? And so it always feels good to get a good protege. It's encouraging and it's positive, and it helps the mentor validate their own existence and validate their own belief and systems and so on and so forth. So I believe in women relationships, but even ones that don't necessarily appear to be women relationships can really be women relationships when you peel back what the benefits are to both persons. So think about cooperation. Think about what it's going to take to move the needle there. So you're in communion. You understand camaraderie. We talked about cooperation. Now we got to talk about the next thing that really gels people and keeps them together. It is an agreement or feeling an action of solidarity, right? Especially around common interest, to share beliefs, to share a willingness to act on behalf of those beliefs. There's nothing greater than somebody who's going to be with you in the trenches. There's nothing greater than someone who is going to take action on the same things that you want to take action on and believes greatly in a common cause, right? There's a solidarity behind what you're doing, and you agree, and there's a unity to that you both agree to. I can't tell you how special it is when, you're working together collectively with someone on something and you both are, passionate about it. Now, you don't have to be equally passionate about it, right? You can't compare passion, right? But you do have to be passionate. You do have to care about the thing that you care about, the thing that you say you care about. You do have to have solidarity in how you express it, where you're coming from, and that whole 9 yards, right? So once you now have this understanding of communion, you have this understanding of camaraderie, you have this understanding of cooperation, you have the understanding of solidarity. The next thing you got to get to is a true understanding of social ability, right? You have to be amenable. You have to be friendly. You have to be cordial. And you can't make the mistake of thinking you're being friendly and amiable. It doesn't work, right? So it has to be an agreed level. It has to be a level of connection that you both agree to in terms of what we're going to do for, with, around each other. What happens when you see each other? Do you smile automatically? Do you embrace? Do you shake hands? Two-handed shake hands. Do you really, really look forward to being in the same space with people and really enjoy the time that you spend together? That means you've got that lock on social ability, right? The last of the 6 levels of connectorship is affiliation. Understanding that you are connected. In fact, we all are connected. Every human being is connected somehow, some way to the human family. But the people that you choose to have closer, deep connections with, that you choose to be affiliated with, it means that there's something about them that rubs off on you, and there's something about you that rubs off on them, such that when people see you, they automatically connect you together. People understand that you have something special going on. If people can't see how you work together on your goals, how you work together in teams, how you have mutual respect for each other, how you have common interests and you trust each other's shared success, and you're willing to mentor each other or guide each other or learn from each other, guess what? You're not affiliate. you don't have an affiliate relationship. It should be something that is demonstrated by your actions. Your affiliations should show up in other people should be able to see that you're connected to someone else. If not, then you have a secret kind of thing going on, right? And you don't want that. That doesn't help you with transparency. It doesn't help you with accountability. It doesn't help you do all the things we talked about earlier. And it is super important that you can't be afraid of affiliation. If you are harboring doubt about someone else and you're not sure if you should be seen around them, or you're feeling like working with them might somehow diminish you, in a sense that you don't want people in the community to know that you're in a relationship with this person, or you have even a professional relationship with this person, then you're doing yourself and you're doing that other person harm. And I want you to back away from that, that thought process, because you should back away from them, really, when it comes down to it, because you're not bringing anything to the table. You're not bringing anything that's meaningful or useful to them. And I want that to be something that you just kind of fall away from, because when you can't really develop the kind of connection that you develop with people, those things, those levels of commitment, you can't really show up the way you need to show up. So how do you work with all these things? How do you measure these things? Well, you can assess for yourself really how you might be doing when it comes to developing professional meetings at work, right? Do you find yourself with people that you're both actively passionate about, the things that you're actively passionate about, and you share those? That's thing one. Thing two, do you have similar thoughts when you ask yourself the question, what do we hope to be, do, or have at the end of our working relationship? If you're sharing those things and you understand what those things are and you agree with those things for each other, then you're doing a good thing, right? If you're meeting regularly, and I mean at least once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks tops, then you know you're doing what you need to do to share and preserve that relationship. And that relationship may have some staying power, some integrity, some ability to be sustainable. Super important. If you have a level of mutual respect for one another. Now, let me define respect for you, because I know a lot of times we think we respect everybody. Let me just break the myth here. It is impossible to respect everybody, because respect, as it goes as a word, means to adore and to hold in high esteem. Something about somebody you adore or you hold in high esteem. Now, you can't hold everybody in high esteem because you don't know them. You can't adore everybody, but you don't know them. You may know some characteristic about them as a human being. They have hands and legs and feet and arms and eyes, and they feel and they think, okay, they might be a human being. That's something, that's an aspect. And yes, you should, on that level, adore and respect everybody. However, it is the unique characteristic that makes respect work. It's understanding their unique something special about them that you adore or have in high esteem. If you don't have that, you don't truly respect them by the definition of the word respect. So y'all gotta stop changing the definition around. So and ask the question to yourself: Do you regularly share how you respect and adore one another and amongst yourselves? When you do that, you're going to find so many opportunities to grow, to move your partnership forward, to grow your professional relationships. The last question that you might want to ask is, how do you share your partnership? Quite frankly, are you telling other people that you're in a professional relationship with somebody? If I had a protege who didn't want to introduce me to other people as his or her mentor, I think I might be a little offended. Or vice versa. If I had a mentor that I want to keep to myself, I may think as well that, you know what, maybe this person isn't that important to me. Maybe this relationship isn't that important to me. And so think it all the way through, because the old process that we've worked from when it comes to developing professional relationships, and we've said it's all business, it's not personal, that doesn't work. That's okay for a transaction. That's okay for a temporary situation, right? But long term, you don't want to be in transaction-based relationships with a whole lot of people. At some level, you're going to want to go deep. You're going to want to really develop something special with someone. I'm going to leave you with a quote from John Joseph Powell, who says, "It's an absolute human certainty that no one can know his own beauty or perceive a sense of his own worth until it has been reflected back to him in the mirror of another loving, caring human being." That's what it's all about, folks. If others are not responding to you in a way that mirrors back to you the greatest gifts, the things that you have to share, the things that you are all about in a way that's positive and affirming to you, then you've got some work to do. Either in choosing the right people to be around for yourself, or also in actually being the person that you believe that you should be with other professionals. Because at some point, you have to ask yourself, am I asking people to perform a level of trustworthiness that I'm not willing to display? Do I have the integrity that I need to truly respond to how I respect others? And what does that look like? Now, I know I mentioned a lot of emotional stuff in this particular process we're going to share with you. I talked to you about the 4 meeting rules to follow. I talked to you about the 6 techniques that you're going to need to hone in on to really understand this concept of connectorship. And I talked about a couple different concepts that you're going to need to make sure that you are creating kind of masterful strategy sessions that you're going to need to create to work with people, right? But underlying it all is emotional intelligence, right? You need to have the ability to empathize with others and understand how they might be feeling when you say or do the things that you say or do, and then be aware enough to sense their feelings at any given moment and respond appropriately to those feelings. People love being around others who have emotional intelligence. Now, if you've never read the book by Dr. Daniel Goleman, I suggest that you do so. I was looking at it on my shelf. It's right here. It's at my fingertips every day. This is Emotional Intelligence, one of my favorite books. This book really breaks down everything as to why emotion matters. And another book that I want you to think about, this is one of my favorite books too. This is from Britt Andrietta. This is called Wired to Connect. This book talks about how important it is that we develop the connections that we need to develop with one another before we start going into collaboration, before we start thinking about what inclusion might be for ourselves or others. We really have to understand how this emotional Wi-Fi works with human beings, how we share emotions and feelings. Because when we understand that, we can work much better together. We can actually help each other reach a level of fulfillment, restoration, rejuvenation, and everything we need to be happy in life. But if we don't even explore those options and we're thinking it's all just about profit, or it's all just about achieving goals, or it's all just about getting the tasks done, and we forget purpose, and we forget vision, and we forget all the connections and emotional ties that are important in those things, then we're going to lose and continue to lose the very essence of our humanity. And we're not going to be able to support each other where we need that support. And I don't want that for you, and I certainly don't want that for me. And so I hope that you all enjoyed or got something out of our session today. If you need to, you can download off of either website, LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, our entire 9 steps. And I hope you engage in the practice exercises in the programs. Next week, we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about next week? Next week, we're going to be talking about establishing win-win relationships. The two, as you see, as we go deeper and deeper, we're going higher and higher on the trust level. And as we go higher and higher on the trust level, we're getting more and more into the emotional content, right? What do you have to do to tap in with people? What do you have to do to make sure that you're finding and creating and generating massively successful professional relationships? That's what it's all about. And I hope you get there. Next week, we're talking about establishing win-win relationships. And I hope you are here to see that. Hope you're here to participate. Hope you're here to ask questions and engage. If not, don't keep us a secret. Make sure that you share this. Make sure that you talk about this. Make sure that, you're here. You show up either in recording, in an on-demand session, or in live session. This has been Coffee Tea, You and Me. I'm Coach Powell. I'm signing out. God bless you and good night.